Today we're going to be macrameing these Celtic tree ornaments. Hi friends, let's get started. I'm going to be working off of this small 1-inch wooden ring. So grab your first really long strand of braided cord and we're going to fold it in half to find the center. Now I do prefer braided cord for this project because braided cord is stronger and stiffer, which means it'll hold the shape of our tree a lot better. Okay, so once you have your loop, you want to place that loop right in through the center of your wooden ring. And then you want to take the long tail end and thread that right through your loop. This is called a lark's head knot. Once all your tail end is pulled all the way through, you can go ahead and cinch up your knot. Next, you want to repeat the same process with your second strand of braided cord. And on a side note here, if you ever find that I'm going too fast for you, feel free to adjust the speed of this video by tapping the 3 dots on the top right corner. Alrighty, fold your third cord in half, and then with the center loop, place that behind your 2 cords. Then with your fourth cord, you want to fold it in half and thread it right through your first loop and place it over top of your last cord. Then pull the tail ends through the loop. This is called a reef knot, which is a variation of a square knot. Once your tail ends are through, you can go ahead and cinch up the slack. Alrighty, so divide your cords into 2. What we're going to do is form the top peak of our tree. So starting with the 4 cords on our left hand side, we're going to tie a square knot. To tie a square knot, you want to make a loop on your leftmost cord. Then with your rightmost cord, place it over top of the tails, behind your 2 center cords, and up through the loop on your left. Cinch up your slack all the way up to the very top. Now this is only half of your square knot, so to complete the other half, you want to repeat the same thing but to the other side. So this time you're making a loop with your rightmost cord, and then with your leftmost cord, you bring it behind and through the loop. So that is how you tie a regular square knot. So next what we're going to do is we're going to repeat the same thing and tie another square knot directly underneath our first one. Now I feel like this pattern is beginner friendly because it's made up of primarily square knots, which is a pretty common macrame knot. However, there is going to be a couple of little tricky spots when we make our turns. But don't worry, this project is still fairly easy and I'll walk you through it all the way. Alrighty, so you should have 7 square knots in total. To count, you want to count these bars on the side, so just make sure you double check because we need it to have perfect symmetry. Next, we're going to repeat the same thing but to the other side. So grab your next set of 4 cords and tie 7 square knots all the way down. Now the last time I made a Celtic knot, I was mispronouncing it and calling it a Celtic knot, and boy did you guys tell me. Full disclosure, I will probably mispronounce it again, and I apologize. Alrighty, so now we want our tree to turn inwards. Now this is the part that I was referring to earlier as being a little bit trickier. So you can see on this side, all our cords want to go towards the left, except for this far right cord here in the center. That one is going in the correct direction. So to get our other cords to do that, what we're going to do is tie a row of double half-hitch knots. Grab the first cord and bring it over to your right hand side. That is your filler cord. And then with the next cord in line, you want to make a loop and then wrap the tail end around and through the loop, tying around your filler cord. This is only half of your knot, so to complete the other half, you want to repeat the same thing, making a loop with your cord, wrapping it around and through the loop. And that is how you tie a double half-hitch knot. So grab the second cord in line and repeat the same thing and tie another double half-hitch knot. At this point, you should have 2 cords that are angled towards your right and 2 cords that are angled towards your left. To fix that, we're going to tie another double half-hitch knot. So with your first cord, that's going to be your filler cord, and you want to angle that towards your right. Then with the next cord, you want to tie your double half-hitch knot. So we're only tying one double half hitch knot in this row. Now you should have 3 cords that are angled in the right direction and 1 cord that is not. We're going to ignore that 1 cord, we will deal with him later. But first we're going to repeat that whole process again, but to the other side. But this time the other side is going to be going in the opposite direction. So this time grab your very last cord as your filler cord and bring it all the way to your left, and then form your 2 double half hitch knots. Hopefully at this point in the pattern you are still sticking with me. Let me know in the comments below how you're making out. These corners are the trickiest part of this pattern, but they're really not that bad. So these little macrame Celtic trees can be Christmas ornaments, or they could actually work as a small wall hanging as well. If you wanted to turn it into a larger wall hanging, you could just simply tie more square knots in each section, but you would have to increase the length of your rope. And on the other side, you could make it smaller to turn it into a smaller Christmas tree ornament. But I do caution you, if you do go smaller, it does interfere a little bit in the visibility of your Celtic design. The smaller you go, the more tight your Celtic knot will be. Alright, so now all your cords should be facing inwards. Next, we're going to tie more square knots going all the way down towards our right hand side. Now, this is the part where we're going to deal with that guy who is not facing the right way. As you can see, he gets in line anyways when we're tying our square knot. And I do have to say, this first square knot, you want to make sure that it's snug right up against those double half hitch knots. That way you have a sharp turn in your tree. So with this section of square knots, you want to tie 14 of them, which is double the length of our first section, and you want to keep that in mind if you want to adjust the size of your Celtic tree. And of course, repeat on the opposite side. Now we want it to have a sharp turn parallel to our previous square knots. So our first corner was a right angle. This one is going to be more acute. To make it acute, we're going to repeat the same process we did before. So this cord here is going the right direction. Grab the top cord and bring that down as your filler cord and tie 2 double half hitch knots. For some reason, the double half hitch knot has the bad reputation of being the knot that everyone seems to struggle with, especially if you're a beginner. And the best advice that I could give you is to watch out for your tension. You want your double half hitch knot to coil around your filler cord. You don't want it too tight. If you pull it too tight, then your filler cord can buckle and you won't have that line that the double half hitch knot gives you. But also you want to hold your filler cord tight. That way it doesn't give the opportunity to buckle. And furthermore, the direction that you hold your filler cord will change the direction of your knots. So if you want your row of double half hitch knots really tight up against your last row, you might want to angle your filler cord up slightly. That way you get the closest knot possible. Okay, so back to our acute angle. So at this point, it is exactly the same as our right angle. So to make it acute, what you want to do is tie a square knot right directly underneath our turn. Make sure it's really snug up against our corner here, and we're only tying 1 square knot for now. Once you have your square knot tied, we're going to make the exact same corner again, right below it. So our rightmost cord is going in the direction we need it to go. So then we're going to take our leftmost cord and use that as our filler cord and tie our row of double half hitch knots. Alright, so let's go over what we had just done. To make our corner acute, what we did is tied 2 corners with 1 square knot in the center. Now our cord should run parallel to our long line of square knots. And of course, what we did to one side, we have to do to the other side. So tie a regular corner, followed by a square knot, and then another regular corner to make it acute. Now your Celtic tree should look something like this. And don't worry about the Celtic knot design, we will do that after. For right now, we need it to go back upwards. To do that, we're going to tie another long line of square knots, 14 square knots again in total. Make sure you count them to double check, flip it around, and what we need to do is repeat the same thing to the other side. Now we need to create another right angle so that it joins together at the top. So this first cord here is going in the direction we want it to go. So grab the very last cord and bring it over to your left. Use that as your filler cord and tie your double half-hitch knots. And of course, repeat the angle on the other side. So now we need to create the last square knot section to join it together. And just like the top of our tree, it's going to be 7 square knots. Now to have a seamless join, we need to make another corner here. This corner will make it come to a point and not look like it ends abruptly. We're only making this turn on one of the sides, not both sides this time, and it doesn't matter which side you choose. Okay, so we're going to clean up the ends here before we tie our Celtic knot. So let's clean up the end that has the turn first. To do that, you want to snip off all the excess cord, leaving about a ½ inch or so. Make sure you don't cut it too short. A ½ inch or a little less is perfect. Okay, so this is important. Make sure that you take your end and you turn it over to the other side. This is the side that you don't want anyone to see. Then grab your hot glue gun and go ahead and fold in those little tail ends onto the hot glue. If you're using synthetic rope, you could melt the ends and fuse it together, but mine is cotton, so we're going to have to hit it up with hot glue. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing to the other side, except for these 2 center cords. We're not going to fold those in, we're going to leave them alone. So again, make sure you flip it over and then hit it up with hot glue. And we're only folding in the 2 outside cords, not the 2 center cords. Alright, so now it's time to tie our Celtic knot. So the easiest way for me to show you is if you take it all apart. Then you want to take the left hand side and form a loop. So it should be kind of shaped funny, kind of like a boot. And you want to make sure that the tail end is on the top. Next, you want to take your other side and grab the acute angle. And you want to slip that behind your boot and in through the loop. And pull it all the way through. And then with the left hand side, you want to grab the tail end and you want to go behind and back up through that boot. And then finally with your tail end, you want to bring that behind and around and up through the top of your tree. And it should form your Celtic design. So now we can join our top two pieces together. To do this, you want to grab that piece that you left a tail and you want to snip it fairly short. And the reason why we're cutting it short now is because if we had done so earlier, it could have unraveled our knots. Add a generous amount of hot glue and then just press it into our corner join on the other side. You might need to hold it for a minute or two just to make sure that it joins tight. And now we can go ahead and adjust our Celtic knot. Because we're using braided cord, it should be strong enough to hold its shape, but if you're worried about it shifting around too much, you can always grab your hot glue gun and then glue it in the sections that it overlaps. I'm fairly confident that mine's not going to shift around too much, but feel free to glue it if you wish. Now, unfortunately, this project does create a fair amount of waste, so what we're going to do is create a tree trunk with some of the scrap pieces. Grab two of the longest strands, and you want to place them in through that very bottom center loop. Once you have it threaded through, you want to join the two ends together to find the center. And once you have it centered on your tree, what we're going to do is split the back two cords and then place the front two cords in the middle. You want to make sure that everything is centered and even, and then grab the two back cords. What we're going to do is tie a square knot around the two front cords. And you want to make sure that you cinch it up fairly taut, not tight enough that it buckles, but tight enough that it's really secure on there. I find 3 square knots will do the trick. So go ahead and tie 3 consecutive square knots. And of course, I can't just leave it hanging there. What we're going to do is tie a bow. So make a loop on your left-hand side, and you want it fairly long. Then with the rightmost cord, you want to wrap that behind and through the loop, and then pull. To make sure that this bow does not slip out, we're going to tie a double knot. So with your 2 loops, you want to cross it over and tie a knot. Now, if you absolutely love this macrame Celtic tree, I think you'll also love my heart tutorial. Click the link on the screen now, and I'll see you over there.